Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to everyone today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're expecting a full house today, so we received 1,000 registrations, and then the event was full. So we hope all of them are able to join back us today. And the numbers are going up for the participants, but I'll let that go on and begin for now. So thank you again for joining us. We're covering intermediate level teachers this week, and we are covering session 3 today, which is understanding spoken and written text, developing receptive strategies, skills and strategies. So this is intermediate teacher level. This is session 3. We have an afternoon session at 1 p.m. again. So this is the one that we'll cover right now, and then we'll do session 4 in the afternoon. We are covering Super Goal 1, Super Goal 3, and Super Goal 5. I'm just covering that part to make sure you're in the right session. Mega Goal is going to be covered next week. Before I proceed, quick sound check, as you know, just to make sure you can hear my voice, everything's okay. There should be a hand icon on the right side of your screen, and just below your name. If you can just click on the hand icon to just let me know if you can hear me. Excellent, lots of hands going up, super. So moving on to the moderators for today, you've got me, Serish, my colleagues Minerva, Nikos, Nedini, and Asir. And as always, we'll be there in the background to answer any questions you have, or if you face any trouble during the webinar, anything at all audio that you will need, you can just flag it to us and we'll be able to help you out there. The other thing is, of course, we've got our lovely, wonderful speaker who's here with us every day and very patient. So thank you, Denai, for joining us. Thank you. As you all know, Denai is a teacher educator. She's a content developer, and moreover, she's also an author. She's actually co-authored the Saudi editions, and she successfully delivered several training workshops for supervisors and trainers in Saudi Arabia. So thanks, Denai, again. She usually refers to a handout sometimes, which you can download. So I'm going to drop the link of the handout for today's session in the chat box. This handout is downloadable, so you'll be able to click on the link, and there are 2 handouts inside. So feel free to download them, because when she's going to refer to them, you'll have them with you beforehand. And our lovely housekeeping slides, which we never forget. So once you're in the WebEx platform, you'll have to connect to the audio. Some of you face a problem where you say you cannot hear us. You will have to connect to the audio. So you can use the call-in function, and the other thing is connecting the audio using your computer and then your device. My colleagues can drop how to connect the audios in the chat box in case you're facing an issue there. So we'll keep reminding you again, because we know that your colleagues join in later during the session, and they've probably missed the housekeeping slides as well. So we'll just make sure we cover that as we go along, and drop the handouts links for you as well. We do recommend closing down any high networking apps such as Netflix, YouTube, any gaming platform, because this is going to affect your bandwidth during the webinar. So make sure that's all closed down, extra browsers and everything else. You also receive a certificate of participation, which we get a lot of questions for. So watch out for that email. You will receive it in an email, and you will be able to download it. However, the certificate of participation is going to come in after the webinar series is completed. So after we complete for intermediate this week, we cover secondary next week. And then onwards, you will get your certificates, which is November 19th. So after November 19th, look out for that email. You will receive your certificate. You will receive the certificate for the sessions that you've attended. All right. We also have an opportunity for Q&A in the end. So make sure you drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll be able to cover those. And then what else is there? I'm just moving my slides. Of course, there's a Q&A box that's on your right side. So you can check this out. It should be on your right side of the screen. Please drop any questions for the presenter, anything about that you need to know, and we will cover it in the Q&A section. So we will cover this as we go along, or we will ask Danai towards the end. You can also use the chat box if you want to engage with her. She usually reads out questions, responses from the chat box, or you have any comments, just put them in the chat box for us. And lastly, a few questions that come in is about, you must have noticed you can only see yourself on the right side of the screen, so you can only see your name. You are not in a hidden list, or there are other people as well. So far we have about 689 people who have joined us till now, but you're not the only one in the webinar is what I'm trying to say. There are other people as well. Your colleagues are very much with you. It's just you cannot see their name for because of GDPR purposes and privacy. So you can only see your name. And you're also marked present automatically by the system. So you don't need to mark your attendance anywhere or make sure that you have to be marked present or attended. We can see you here. We can very much read your comments as well. But it's just that the system is automated, so we know what time you logged in and what time you log off. So you don't need to mark yourself anywhere. The same way that you cannot see the names, you can only see your name. You cannot see the other comments that are coming in the chat box. You can only see your comments. However, we can see all the comments coming in, so don't worry about it. Danai usually reads a couple of these comments out to you, so you know what's going on and you can follow along. So that's fine. Hopefully we have less joining issues to the webinar today. Please use the link that you receive in your email. This is the confirmation link that you receive after you register for the webinar. Use that link to join in the webinar. You can also use the reminder link that you receive on the same day. You can use either of them. Both will work all right. Please don't share the links with your colleagues, because this is going to create a problem. Your name is not going to appear right on the screen as well, and the certificates are going to be an issue because they're going to have your colleague's name on it, because there's going to be a duplicate of the names. And also, every session is unique. I cannot stress this enough. Use your links to all 5 sessions. All 5 sessions for intermediate teacher is going to be different. This session has a different link. The one that you have in the afternoon is a 1 p.m. link. So this same link is not going to work. Please use the link for 1 p.m. You can see this information in your confirmation email clearly. So it's going to show you, this is a tip by the way, it's going to show you the date, it's going to show you the time of the session. So you can just verify, okay, today is November 11th, what time is it? It's a 10 a.m. session. This is the link I need to use. For the 1 p.m., it's going to mention the time as well and the day. So just make sure you're logging in the right time. And unless there are any questions, I can pass over to Danai. I'm just going to have a look. Yes, I have started speaking, Maha. The sound is clear. Excellent. Handout 3, I've just dropped the link. We can drop it again. Thank you for Minerva for dropping out the audio connection. 680, yes, now we're 7:31. Okay, sorry, one more thing I'll cover. So we do it for an hour, and after an hour, if you need to leave, you can leave. You're free to leave. We will stay back to cover all the question answers then. All right? Now, without delaying any further, I'll just pass over to Danai now. Thank you, Danai, and over to you.
Thank you, Suresh. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. I hope there are people from yesterday as well. Thank you. And thank you to people who have just joined for today. Okay, as Suresh mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about understanding spoken and written text, developing receptive skills and strategies. Now, naturally, we haven't got days to do this on. This is a huge subject, but we'll try and deal with some key issues as best we can. Please feel free again to comment or ask questions. It makes things more interesting, right, to address issues that are relevant. Okay, now, any lists that I show you, and in fact, some of the lists in your handouts are not exhaustive, yeah? There's more. I just put some things that we're going to be referring to throughout. So just to have a think about spoken language. Do we always form complete grammatical sentences when we speak? What do you think? Hello? Anyone there? No. Not all the time. Yes, good, thank you, man. No. Ahmed, yes, no. Let's do some, yes, okay. Fine. So that's settled. So we often say things, but it's not in complete grammatical sentences. So we usually then, in speech, we usually refer to utterances. Yes, speakers do make mistakes, okay? All speakers make mistakes. It doesn't have to be a second language. Okay, but I'm not referring to mistakes. I'm referring to things such as, going? Somebody, instead of asking, are you going? Okay, then it's all understood in the context of the conversation. Hamad, you say you can't hear anything. Sorry, I can't help you there. Do we have unlimited time to plan what we're going to say and rehearse it in a normal interaction, in a normal face-to-face interaction? Again, no, Salim. Yes, Maha, no. Thank you. No, we don't. So the time is restricted. We have restricted processing time. In other words, we have to think as we speak. We have to monitor the person we're addressing, our listener. We have to modify things to make sure they understand, and so on and so forth. Do we only speak when we want to request or exchange information? No, correct. Thank you. When we also speak to do what? If there's no information to exchange, just talk, yeah. Okay, so communicate, okay, to socialize, yeah, for expression, okay, communication. We communicate all the time, but the exchange can be interactional, that involves content, information, and so on, or, wrong. Once again, if there's information exchange, that's transactional. If we communicate with somebody just to be social, to be nice, to show them that we want to speak with them, we want to be polite and all that, that is interactional. So with information, transactional, the other one, interactional. Do we speak then for the sake of speaking, for interacting? Yes, to express your feelings. Do we speak for the sake of, yes, of interacting with other people, not because anything particular to say? Not always, okay. Do we address every person that we speak to in the same way? No, okay. So we address people depending on who they are, what our relationship is to them, okay, what their status is, and so on and so forth. How important are grammar mistakes in spoken communication? not as important as they are in written communication. Okay? As you suggested yourselves, speakers make mistakes. And when I say speakers, I mean everybody, including native speakers, because we haven't got the time to process things carefully and plan and edit and tidy things up. So would you say that it's grammar that's more important, or words, chunks? Chunks can be functions as well, vocabulary, words, yes, chunks. Yes, that is very much the case, that if you know the structure of the language, if you know about grammar, but you haven't got any vocabulary, you can't really communicate. So words, chunks in spoken communication are very important. And I'm always referring to communication in context, yes? And if you remember, that involves where the communication is taking place, the setting, who the people are, the addresser, addressee, why they're communicating, and all the factors that we mentioned yesterday. Okay. And we'll be referring to today as well. Okay. Now, some features of spoken language. Look at the features, please. Think for a minute. That's true. Grammar is important to build up. Oh, sorry. There's a comment that summarizes here. Grammar is important to build up the sentence, but in regular speech, it's not as important as vocabulary. Exactly. Yes. Thank you, Hussein. Okay. So have a look at these features and tell me if you think they're related to spoken language. Repetition. Is it related? Yes, speakers often repeat things. It's not perfect. Pronunciation, yes. Utterances, yes, okay. Sentences, sometimes planned content. False starts, yes, okay. We start saying something one way and then halfway through we change our minds. And redundancy, absolutely. Stops and pauses, okay. In other words, redundancy then would include repetition more than necessary, okay? Repetition, pauses, rephrasing things, yes, chunks and replacing chunks with other chunks, restarts, all that, okay? This is why it's very difficult to understand, to follow somebody, for example, who is lecturing and they're reading out of a written text. There is no redundancy. There aren't any pauses. There aren't enough pauses. There aren't enough repetitions. Okay, and it's very difficult to follow. Tones, yes. Planned content, is that in mostly in spoken language or written language? Yes, correct. Written language mostly. Okay. Punctuation. Yes, written. Phonology, pronunciation. Spoken. You already mentioned redundancy, word chunks, genre. Do we talk about genre? About written and spoken language, both, or one of the two? Yes, we're used to using it a lot more for written language, but actually both. Yes, I agree. We think about discourse, spoken discourse and written discourse. So there are different genres depending on the context of communication. Structured communication. Is it spoken language, written language? Okay, fine. All right, in terms of genre, how can we use it? If there's a question about how we can use it for spoken language. Well, I've just mentioned some. Okay. Would you chat in the context that involves a close friend of yours and you're sitting in your living room or your kitchen having a cup of coffee and chatting about things in your life? Is the genre the same as a lecture? Okay. Or a formal presentation? No. Okay, fine. So this is how we use it. Now, I would like us to do a little listening activity. Okay. So for the purposes of this one, please listen to the information that I'm going to give you about the context. And then answer the questions. Would you be kind enough, please, to write the questions if you can, or key them in so you can see them on your screen? Okay, I'll give you the questions in a minute. So the context of communication is this. Two friends have arranged to meet after work. They usually arrange to have dinner together twice a month. They're on the sidewalk. People are walking past them. There's quite a bit of traffic. They're close to the river. Okay? So they're in a town where there's a river, town or city. Okay, I'll repeat the context. The context is two friends, two adults, have arranged to meet after work. They usually arrange to have dinner together twice a month, so it's a pretty regular thing. They're on the sidewalk twice a month. They're on the sidewalk. People are walking past them. There's quite a bit of traffic. They're close to the river that goes through the town. Okay? I hope you have formed the picture in your mind. Okay, now, the questions are, if you can write them, where do they decide to go? How are they going to get there? What day is it? Okay, you already have some expectations. Good. Okay, let's see if your expectations are going to be confirmed when you listen to the exchange. Okay, so this is the exchange. Please listen. Hey, good to see you again. Where shall we go then? How about fish? There's a really good fish restaurant about 10 minutes away. Great. We're walking, right? Yes, of course. It's really close. We haven't booked. Is that going to be a problem? I don't think so. They're not very busy on Wednesdays. Okay. I'll repeat that conversation once again. Hey, good to see you again. Where shall we go then? How about fish? There's a really good fish restaurant about 10 minutes away. Great, we're walking, right? Yes, of course, it's really close. We haven't booked. Is that going to be a problem? I don't think so. They're not very busy on Wednesdays. Very good. You got everything, okay? Yes, they decide to go to a restaurant. What kind of, oh, fish restaurant? Well done. How are they going to go there? Are they going to drive? Walk. They're going to walk. Yes, great. Okay, what day is it? You mentioned that earlier. Yes, you did say Wednesday. Yes, very good. Okay, so most of you got everything first time around. Why do you think you got this so quickly? Is it because you do, yes, fish restaurant on foot, eat fish Wednesday? Very good. It's easy. It's easy for you, yes. It was easy. The context was clear, absolutely. So because the context was clear, you had certain expectations. You expected to hear certain things, and you did it extremely quickly. And then you had to listen and confirm or modify according to what you heard, because you formed the picture, imagined it, simple vocabulary. It's natural, it's normal vocabulary. Okay? It's a kind of communication that could go on. Yes, you are familiar with the situation, you can visualize it. Right. That's what your students can do as well, you know, if they have the context, if they know how they're going to go about things. So let's remember that. Let's remember that context is important. It sort of gets you ready, it prepares you for what you're going to hear. Sometimes you get a lot more information about the context. Sometimes there's information that's missing. So you can't really do listening without allowing your students to think, to raise expectations and express them, okay, to associate with things they know, and what they know can vary greatly, right? It's knowledge not only about the language, it's not only linguistic knowledge, it's also situational. It could be all types of different knowledge. Okay, so let's try to remember that. Features of written language. Yes, you can put the picture first. Very good. Okay, features of a written language. Do you have repetition in written language? Oh, sorry. That was a good question. Which is best, to listen to the questions first or the audio first? Unless you're doing it to train them to get the gist of the conversation, which is really harder. The questions first, yes, thank you. Questions first, very good. Why? Why questions first? To have goals, to have some kind of focus, to listen for a reason, okay? Yes, very good. To prepare them, again, to raise expectations. I think I can go away now and finish and stop talking because you know it all. Yes? Okay. Yes, okay. To give attention, brainstorming, listen for specific details. Yes, listen for specific details, listen for the main idea, listen for information, listen and respond. Okay? Shall I give them general idea about the text before listening? I don't think that's necessary if the context is clear. What we want to do is to train them to understand text, to understand speech that they haven't come across before, yeah, in the long term. Yes, give them the context and ask them to try and work out, to try and imagine what is going to be said, okay, you don't give prior knowledge. Yes, it has to do with prior knowledge, but you elicit prior knowledge from the learners. So give them the context. And then, do you remember what you did? You instantly, without listening to it, said, okay, they're going to dine. You didn't know exactly what kind of restaurant they were going to go to, but you put two and two together. So it will depend on how well you establish the content. So you like to give some examples for more illustration. Now, again, what I would like to stress is that instead of giving them the examples, you might want to give them one. Try and elicit examples from them. Okay? Right, listen first. Listen first, you mean without any listening points, without any task to do, without any focus. The reason we try not to do that when we're training people how to develop listening skills is to prevent them from listening for language, from trying to hear every word, because in connected speech, it's not possible to do that. Okay, so I don't mean to bore you, but I'm going to repeat the little conversation that you heard again, and I want you to tell me which words come through. You can hear a lot better. All right, please. So I'm going to do it in chunks. Hey, hey, good to see you again. Good to see you again. Good to see you again. Which words do you hear? See, yes. And good, yeah, okay. See, you hear, good to see you again. You is not heard as clearly, but you complete it in a sense. You use your mind to complete it. So you use what you know about situations like this and the language to complete it. Okay, let's do one more. Yes, C is more stressed. Where shall we go then? Where shall we go then? Go, correct, okay? So you don't even hear the question word. The question word is not as stressed. So one point I'd like to make is, okay, this is not 100% always, but it is something to bear in mind and train your learners in, because in standard exchange, usually we do tend to stress the word that carries the main information. So that's the word we tend to hear more. And then we use what we know, situational and linguistic, to try and complete the message, okay? Why am I doing this with you? Just to remind you of some things and really trying to persuade you to do similar things with your students, okay? So get them to listen and identify stress, okay? And you will get activities like this in your material anyway. So when it says pronunciation, don't sort of rush through it without paying any attention. We don't want people to develop a perfect pronunciation, but we certainly want them to be able to understand different speakers. We want them to be able to understand people who have different pronunciation in English. We want them to understand British speakers, we want them to understand Americans, Australians, and so on and so forth. That's a long-term aim. Okay, now, different accents. Yes, correct. Okay, I'm going back to the features of written language. So do we have repetition in written language, as we do sometimes in speaking? Is it repetition or no? Correct. It's not exactly, but we have substitution, so we refer to the same thing through different words and so on and so forth. Conjunctions, okay, chunks, words that connect ideas, okay, that work as conjunctions that for written language, yeah? Conjunctions that operate as discourse markers, yes. Do we have utterances in written language? No, unless, of course, you're reading maybe fiction, literature, a book, and where there are dialogues, in which case you will see utterances because it's the spoken language that represents it. Sentences. Do we have sentences? Yes. Paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is really one of the strategies that we use in spoken language. But yes, we can paraphrase in written language as well. Okay. Referencing. Yes. Restarts. Do we have restarts in written language? No. Okay, that's part of the features of spoken language. Cohesion in written language. Yes, absolutely. When we plan so that there is cohesion, okay, that things connect, that go together, are organized. Information structure, yes. Genre, I think, yes, you agree. Stops and pauses in written language? No. Okay, planned content. Do we plan what before we write? Yes. Can we please agree to spend a bit more time in class allowing your students to do that when you ask them to write? But also, you can ask them to expect to find organized content in written language when they're about to read. Punctuation. Yes, written language. Phonology, pronunciation. No, not really, but excuse me. We do have a bit of a problem here because I was looking at some of the questions and comments over the last couple of days, and I do realize that when we talk about reading, many people kind of associate that with reading aloud. Is reading aloud common if you read something? Do you read sort of the paper or the news on your screen aloud? Maybe you do. Some people might. Okay, but not really. Okay, so what do we do? Why is reading aloud used in the language classroom with students who are familiar with the script and can read and write, at least in terms of basic skills? Why do we use reading aloud? What purpose does it serve? It doesn't really help. No, it doesn't help. Yes, it's better to let the track play and let them try to follow the soundtrack. Absolutely. Improve reading. It improves reading aloud, which is a different skill. It allows them to listen to themselves reading. Yes, if you have the sort of learner that needs that to be able to understand, all right. To give them some questions about the text and they answer it after they read aloud. Why? Would you all read something aloud if you wanted to get some meaning, some information out of it? If I gave you a summary of the skills, of receptive skills, yes, some students understand more when they hear. Yes, I agree. Okay, if it's auditory, we're talking about learning styles here. But what I'm trying to say is we go for reading aloud in early stages of literacy when we want, yes, to correct their pronunciation. Yes, I agree. But it's something we use in early stages of literacy to make sure that younger children, younger learners associate the sound of the language with the symbols, with the letters, that they can read, they can identify things. Yes, phonetics. Okay. Why do we also want them Will they read when they take the exams? Would they read aloud? No. No, correct. Okay, please allow me to complete that, what I started talking about. Reading aloud for auditory learners and so on, yes, that's understood. And when they can't really make a loud sound, a lot of people sub-vocalize, so you can see them moving their lips as they read. It might help, yes, but one thing to bear in mind is it slows down the reading. Because in actual fact, when we read, a reader who is quick and who is an efficient reader does not tend to read every single word. We can see it, but there are all sorts of different techniques. So reading silently is what we usually go for when we want students to read and understand what they're reading. Yes, skimming, scanning, and all that cannot be done aloud. So, how would you feel about this? It's important to listen and read the text first. Okay, but early on, you might want them to, again, follow in their books and listen. But bear in mind that some of your students will not be able, or a number of your students will not be able to answer the questions of the reading unless they're given time to read silently. We're going to talk about, yes, I would go for silent reading to begin with after the pre-reading or pre-listening stage. In the case of the spoken language. We need to deal with all the vocabulary items in the text first. Do you agree with that? It's the third statement. No, good. Because we want them to try and work out meaning from context as well. Again, in more advanced levels, you get very specific tasks for that. Some people say, I don't want my students to read the questions before reading the text. No, don't agree. Good. Okay. Let's not get into what is more or less important. We're talking again about training learners to read for a purpose, for a reason. Okay. Now, in your material, excuse me. There are different sections, yeah? We don't try to do everything through every section. So I'm just showing you this because some of you will have seen it yesterday, so I'm just trying to remind you. Okay. Sometimes you ask them to read comprehension questions to force them to participate, especially on when you're working online. Well, it's a good idea to have comprehension questions. Ask them to look at them, to read them, think about possible answers. This is after you have established the context, got them to brainstorm, and then get them to listen or read and check. Okay, we're getting all mixed up here. I know I have sort of started talking about listening and reading at the same time. Is reading aloud fluency important? No, I don't think so. Okay, because basically we're dealing with all the skills here. And the best thing to do is reflect on what you do in real life. Why do people want to read in real life? Because they want to get some information, because they want to enjoy what they're reading, because they want to get more, they want to develop the language more, okay? So here, the focus is on spoken language, yeah? So it would be listening, okay? Fine, but here, if you're going to practice country, nationality, capital, and so on, which is again spoken, it's controlled practice for different reasons. Yes, exactly. Usually if you discuss the pictures with students to give them information about the lesson subject, then they listen very good. This is exactly what we need to do. Okay, going back. We're talking about the three-stage reading approach, yeah? Okay, so let's carry on. Have you heard, you have heard about bottom-up processing and top-down processing? Okay, just to remind you, bottom-up processing has to do with dealing with what you're listening to from the language to the meaning. The same applies to reading. Top-down processing gets you to listen or to read and focus on the meaning and then reflect on the language. Now, which of the two would require the activation and use of background knowledge? Top-down. Yes, correct. What type of processing is more commonly used in language learning, in second language learning? Hopefully top-down, okay? If you feel that you get your students, first of all, to listen and identify very specific chunks or words or grammar or phonology and whatever, and then construct and try and work out the meaning, then that's bottom up. And we don't really do that unless, in language learning, unless we use the skill to present and practice language, which is also what we do, yeah? So in listen and discuss, for example, here, you are doing this because you want the students to listen to practice and use the verb to be, if you look at the grammar of this unit, okay, and get used to certain functions about asking and answering about nationalities. So you have a lexical aim as well. And by the way, may I point out that in your teacher's guide, you have the unit goals in this box. Please do look at it. You encourage students to form questions. Yes, fine. Okay. So anyway, the three-stage approach that most of us, I think, use. Oops. Sorry about this. Trying to go back and forth and making a mess of it. Okay. I'm going to skip this. Okay. Before reading. All right. What's the purpose? To activate background knowledge, language associated with the topic or situation. Activate, sorry that I missed something out there, a schema or script related with certain events, activities, behavior, behavioral norms, appropriacy, and so on. This is, again, first of all, with listening, okay? Yes, to make it easier to understand, because this is how we operate, okay? So if I say to you, I went to the dentist yesterday. Yes, the setting. You visualize the setting. If it's familiar, if the setting is familiar, then you can visualize it, you know exactly what is involved, okay? Yes, yes, yes. But basically what you want to do is to have active minds, because our minds are active when we listen. We don't listen in a void. The same happens with reading. We don't read in a void, okay? We have certain expectations. Yes, you will have certain expectations. What language are you going to use? You're going to use English, okay, as much as possible. If it's lower level, your tasks and the language that you're using has to be simpler, pitched at the level of the students, so they can, in any way, what you are asked to listen to or read there is easier, is pitched to the right level. Okay, while reading, if you remember yesterday, those of you who were here yesterday, what I suggested was that what appears in your course books as after reading, you can move in the way you use it. I mean, I predict the vocabulary that I'm going to use in a dentist. Sorry. Yes, of course, you can do that. Okay. You can use a task that is in your book for after reading as part of your while reading. Now, the while reading, again, provides focus, purpose for reading. If you want your students to summarize the reading passage or give you the main idea, then they need to be trained to do so through tasks. And it is very hard for them to do. This is why we try to avoid this type of task, especially when they're not advanced enough. Okay, this is difficult. It's a very specific skill and it's a very specific task, and we usually do it later on, okay? Summarizing requires certain techniques. We teach them those techniques, but a bit later. Yes, you can use questions. You can include questions or the expectation predictions that they have made in the before reading stage. And students read in order to compare their ideas, their prediction, with those in the text and identify different or new elements. Okay? Right? You will get, if you use your teacher's book, you will see suggestions like that in quite a few lessons, okay? Where you're given ideas about what to do in the pre-stage and what sort of questions to ask. You can ask those questions, you can use them, or you can make up your own. But basically, we're focusing on the content, yeah? The purpose of this stage of the after reading, after you read, yes, to get the general idea while reading, to get more details after reading, thoughts and suggestions. Yes, provide opportunities for learners to reflect on the content or aspects of the text, and discuss, express opinion, agree, disagree, or comment. Okay, extend their understanding. Yes. It can also include activities that help learners identify features of the text, such as format, organization, punctuation, etc., with a view to raising their awareness and preparing them for production or writing. Not every time, but when it's relevant. Okay? So you've already suggested a number of examples there. Just to go through. When we talk about reading, in language, does this involve reading? Does the grammar section involve reading? Yes. Yes. Questions before the reading, absolutely. Okay. So, to go back, okay. Just to remind those of you who are here, these are some of the things that you might do before reading, yeah? Some of you, not only the questions of the book, no, but some of you mentioned that the first thing you do is use the visuals, okay? Use images, not only the ones in the book. You might download your own. That's the best way to start, I think. So look at the picture. It's got to do with the text that you're going to read. What do you think the reading text is going to be about? Yes, you can discuss the pictures, you can discuss the title, we'll get there. Work in pairs or groups, justify your ideas, present your ideas in class or online. Now, if you're online and you can't get them to work in pairs, give them a minute or two to brainstorm on their own. Encourage them always to make notes, because otherwise they won't be able to remember. And then, you mentioned title. In this case, I would do it in stages. So in this particular lesson, I would begin with the picture, so make it a little more, in a sense, mysterious. If you want to draw people's attention, it's better not to give them everything. Using a helping photos for each passage as you can. Yes, of course. Okay, so you can't really tell exactly what's happening from this photo. This is done on purpose to get people interested, okay? Think about this. When you read, if you like reading sort of, detective novels and thrillers and action and whatnot, there's suspense, okay? Why? Because you don't have all the information. You don't know what's going to happen. So in a sense, what I'm trying to say is, don't give them everything. Help them get things from what they see, from what they hear, okay? Relate. Let them think, exactly. Let them think. Okay, first, to activate knowledge, okay? Again, knowledge of situation, background knowledge, and language knowledge. Because at this stage, okay, you mentioned title before. I would do this in 2 stages. First, I would go through the picture, and then I would go through the title. Now, look at the title, brainstorm on words and phrases that you think will be used in the text. Make notes, okay? This, naturally, is a lot better if you can ask the students to work in pairs or groups, okay? To look at the title and think of possible words and so on. This is before they have opened their books. You can use your screen to only show them what you want. So you access the text, you access the topic gradually. Yes, you help them express their ideas. You're monitoring comprehension, but again, you're activating the knowledge and the associations that they need in order to understand. So by doing this, what we're trying to do is to simulate the process that we go through when we read anyway, but half the time we're not aware of. Okay. back again to listening. Yeah, you'll get listening of different types in your books. For example, here, there's a very interesting feature. You have look at the picture, look at this picture, and answer the questions, okay? You can actually, if you look through your lesson, you can actually use this, get them to look, and think of how they can answer. If they can work in pairs or groups, fine. If not, think about how they can answer. And then, after you've discussed that, go through the listening that says, look at the picture again, listen and match with the person. Write the correct sentence number. Okay? So, look through the tasks in your book. There are things that you can combine, and there are things that can really give you all the stages. What do you think of using WH questions map while reading, listening to catch the important detail? Yes, if that's what your goal is, fine. Some students just copy the answers from the internet and in class are completely passive. How can we help them to work in the class? By not asking them to prepare their lesson at home beforehand. That's the one thing I'd say. Secondly, this is why it's important to use your screen now that you're working online in a clever way, break things down, okay, not reveal everything. And quite honestly, if you want to be totally practical about this, it's not going to work with all units, but sometimes it's a good idea to reverse something. Okay, so you might want to do the reading a bit earlier and then go back to the listening. So it's a little more, it's not as predictable. After active knowledge, listen to passage by CB. Make questions and we answer the questions of the book. Okay, but you need to be careful about what questions you're asking, because there are questions that are quite mechanical, okay? Now, in terms of reading, this is reading. This text is on e-learning. Would you expect your learners to be interested in this? Is it relevant? Okay, yes. How can you make sure that they're engaged and thinking? Would you ask them to explain what they mean by e-learning? Can students relate to the topic? Is it current? Would you combine top-down and bottom-up processing? I know some people have to leave. Thank you very much. And thank you for your patience. Okay, so yes, there are all kinds of very relevant topics that you can use with your parents, with your students, but this stage, the before reading stage, yes, show them a video segment, absolutely. Yes, they're living very good, yes, thank you so much. This is really a bonus because, yes, they are in this situation themselves. Yeah, ask them about, yes, you can ask them about the platform, you can ask them about everything. It's so very relevant. Some questions in the book are complicated sometimes, and you give them easier questions so they can answer. Do try and follow a three-stage approach, though, because you will find that they will feel a little more confident. It's different to ask people to read something in a second language, and they're worried that, you know, the first thing they're going to be worried about is words I don't know, expressions I don't know, phrases I don't know. It's going to be difficult. It's not something that happens automatically. Yes, I'm sorry you have to leave now. I do hope you can manage to attend the next session. Okay. So, and I suppose, yes, we need to wrap up. Let me go back and try and wrap up. Going back to the very practical aspects of this three-stage approach. Yes. Before reading, what you do to activate, because we don't read or listen. Affective needs learning needs. Yes, of course. Students imagine themselves as working independent adults. Good. Okay, that's fine. So it is important to activate the knowledge, so you don't approach the text, be it a spoken text through listening or reading with a blank mind, because then it's very difficult to process. Okay, and just think about it. If somebody just throws a piece of paper at you and says you have to read this, how would you feel? Would you feel comfortable reading it? Okay. So yes, I think we'll have to stop. One of your handouts actually gives you some examples of questions that are not always very successful, especially in reading, because they can be answered automatically through grammar without understanding the content. Okay? Bored. So, have you found this boring? This is your report for the last section. Okay. I'm sorry about that. Okay. I'll wrap it up now. In the afternoon session, we're going to be carrying on with production. Okay? We're going to be carrying on with speaking and writing. Yes, to practice with learners who understand keywords. Stress items that carry information are important for the students to understand. Okay, I know that we attempted to cover huge ground here. Thank you very much for your patience. Your last question about it's a little bit spoken, but we appreciate it. Okay. What about the last question about how you feel if someone hands you a paper? Okay. All right. So different reactions to the session. Thank you so much. I'll try and keep all of you engaged next time, if I can. I know this is very difficult because we're covering huge ground, but the reason I tried to cover it this way is because we have 1 hour and because this is relevant to the material you have, and it's how we go about developing skills and strategies with receptive skills with your students, with our students. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danai. Thank you so much. It's such a valuable session, really, and thank you for your time for doing this for all of us.
Thank you.
Thanks. If you can, you're free to leave if you want to. As we mentioned earlier, we know you have urgent matters to get to, classes and prayers, so that's all right, perfectly. We're now going to pause and do Q&As. So and you can stay back if you want to. Entirely up to you. So we will just cover a few Q&As now, and I'll read Danai a few questions if that's all right.
Yes.
Okay, before we move on to the Q&A, there is the afternoon session, as you know, so we hope you join in again. It's speaking and writing. You will have to register for this session, and you can do that on the registration page. We already have 1,000 registrations, so I'm not sure if you will be able to get the registration link now, because your colleagues have clearly all registered already. But yeah, I can drop in the link in the chat box, and you can just have a look if you can register on the page. If you receive the registration link, that would mean that you are in. But yeah, make sure you register. Without registration, we will not be able to help you with the link. We don't have a general link that we can pass around. And please, if you can explain that to your colleagues, that's going to help us a lot. Even today, we've had a lot of questions about sending the link because they were using the link yesterday. So like I mentioned, there are 5 different links and each session has a different link. So when you're joining for the 1 p.m. session, make sure that it says 1 p.m. And the date is November 11th. If you're using the 10 a.m. session link, it's not going to work, unfortunately. So just make sure you've got the right link. And I apologize for repeating myself here. I will now move on to the Q&As. All right, thank you for your questions. Dana, you've actually answered a lot of them as they came along. So thank you for doing that. Some of them are repeated, so we probably have to cover them again. But yeah, well, I'll start now. In reading, just give them questions like comprehension, question mark, and not let them read out to check their pronunciation.
No, if it's reading skills that you want to develop, in other words, if you want to help your learners develop the skills and strategies they need in order to be able to read texts in English and understand them or get information from them or whatever they need to do, it's best to give them questions or give them a chart to make notes in. If you go through your book, you'll see all kinds of different tasks for reading. So they have a purpose for reading rather than get them to read aloud, listen, read aloud again, because that is something we do usually in early literacy skills. And I know this is something that is done a lot in mother tongue, yeah, in the first language. Well, that's why it's done, because when they go to elementary, they've been speaking the language for 5, 6 years, and one of the reasons they're in school is to become literate, to be able to read and write, because we live in a literate society. So it's a very useful skill to have. But we're past the stage usually when we hit intermediate. Okay, so it's not necessary to go through those same stages when we're dealing with the second language, because the concept is familiar, but what we want them to be able to do is to read in order to understand, read for content, okay? Or sometimes read to learn. Like if they look at the grammar table, the grammar chart in your book, where it's a grammar summary, that's reading as well, but they're doing it for a different reason, okay? So the first time they look at it, they might look at it more carefully and read it more slowly. In the future, if they're going to look at it as reference, they're going to glance at it more quickly. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
There's also a follow-up question based on your answer. You mean it's not necessary to evaluate students reading aloud or reading fluency?
No. I don't think it is if we're dealing with a second language, because that doesn't tell us how well somebody understands reading. It's not the skill that we want to develop, unless we are training people to read on radio. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Unless we're training people to read aloud sort of professionally, okay? Now, reading aloud, however, if you're going to do it because you want them to use punctuation in a very practical way, for the first few times, for punctuation purposes, is not a useless activity. It's a good activity, because you don't want them to read very quickly. You want them to be able to pause. You want them to be able to read with meaning. But again, it's a very specific skill that is a different skill.
Okay. And additionally, the other question I have is, what is the best strategy to teach reading?
We've just discussed it. I don't understand what the question is. Try to follow this three-stage approach for all the reasons that we've discussed, because when we are about to read an article, an essay, a book, a news item, something on the web, okay, we have certain expectations. So this is what we try to, in a sense, simulate in class. We try to make reading as realistic as possible. There is cognitive processing. We use our minds, and our minds are not blank. So basically, this is what we're trying to recreate in class to help them read, so that they don't feel they're about to read something in another language, in a second language, and it's all a surprise. They don't know what they're going to read. Then the whole thing, becomes a test, and it's unnatural. We don't read with a blank mind. When we read, we interact with the text. We bring what our assumptions, our knowledge, our expectations to the process of reading. So this is why we follow a three-stage approach.
Thanks, Tanai. And the other one is, if they cannot read, how are they going to answer questions in the exam? It's more of a comment, I feel.
Well, this is exactly why we try to develop reading skills. This is exactly the thing. But if this has anything to do with reading aloud, do they have to read aloud in your exam?
The other one is, which is more important to begin with learning with kids, capital or small letters?
Well, different people think have different opinions on that. I think to a great extent it is dependent on the first language script as well. Personally, I tend to focus more on lowercase, but again, because they're not 6 years old, okay, they need to be able to handle both. Some learners speak fluently based on movies, but they can't read text. How can I deal with? Okay, fine. Then that's exactly the case where you need to do reading lessons following those stages, okay? And use what they know, what they have learned through the movies. Actually, that's a strength if they can speak fluently, yeah? But this is a trend, I think, in a lot of cases with many of our students. And it's something that we can use to our advantage in class rather than fight it.
Thank you so much. And we'll just take two more questions now. How can you apply a flipped classroom on this kind of reading lesson?
You could apply it exactly with the following the three stages. You could maybe ask them, give them some of the information. Don't tell them which text it refers to. Give them the questions, the tasks, and a picture, and ask them to do it at home. Come into class and then do it. If you want to flip the while reading stage, ask them to read and make a note of the answers to the questions. Come into class and report. You can flip whatever. The point is to remember that when you flip learning, you flip roles. You flip roles between learners and teacher. So it's not as mysterious as it might sound. And it's not only something that you can do with only specific tasks, okay? Whatever you can reasonably assign for the students to do independently and then report in class will do the job, will save time, will put them in the position of the teacher, if you like, of the main speaker, of the presenter, of the coordinator, depending on how you manage that. I hope that answers that.
Yeah. And the other one I have here is, oops, sorry, I have to close my chat. Should I do the corrections to students immediately or after they finished in reading?
In reading, again, in all cases, it would be best if you encourage peer correction. So I wouldn't correct. I would encourage learners to listen to each other when they're answering online as well, and ask them if they agree or disagree. And if you want to get more reinforcement there, you can ask them to point to or say exactly which part of the text provides the evidence, which part of the text supports their answer, okay? Which is always a good thing to do.
Thanks. Can you please ask how can we help students acquire the language, especially here in Saudi Arabia, where there is no everyday need to use the language?
I don't think I can answer this question so quickly. It has to do with the approach. I don't know, have you attended any other sessions? Did you attend the session about sort of presenting and practicing language? Making the most of the time you have in class, and also ask them to watch things, okay? Watch videos, watch movies for listening, provide some exposure, and flipped learning could help there as well. It's a very big issue. You're talking about everything, the whole of methodology. I'm afraid I can't give you a very complete answer.
Thanks. Last one, it says, for Mrs. and I do my effort to help them answer by themselves and try to get what I want by many methods, but they always use the teacher's guide to get the answers, in brackets, to make it easy without understanding. What can I do?
You mean the students use the teacher's guide?
I think so, yes. This is what I understood. It seems like they get the answers from the teacher's guide without understanding.
Where do they get the answer? Where do they get the teacher's guide? Do they have access to it on the web? Can they download the teacher's guide?
Yeah, it's online. That's what people are commenting in the chat box. Yes, it's online.
The only practical answer I could give to that is you'll have to change the order, provided it doesn't destroy kind of progression. Change the order in which you do things, not within each lesson, but between lessons. So, for example, as I said before, put the reading lesson a bit earlier, or move it to later. Make changes without destroying sort of progression. You can't begin with a reading lesson. Well, this is a practical problem, isn't it? I do understand, and I do sympathize completely. They shouldn't, yes, obviously they shouldn't have access to the teacher's guide. But change the questions. Use the questions in your teacher's guide. Add your own questions. Rephrase them. Okay? Design different tasks. Okay, you get enough ideas there. So there are suggestions. If you can't do anything else, change the order of the questions. But make some change that's going to be difficult for them to answer mechanically.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for your valuable time in joining us today. I guess we will now round this up for today for the morning session because you guys have to join us again in 1 hour and 30 minutes. So we'll let you off now. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you for 1 p.m. today. Please use the link in your email to join for 1 p.m. Make sure it's the right date and time. We are covering speaking and writing in the afternoon. This is going to be session 4. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments and all your suggestions and questions. Thank you so much. I know this is a difficult area. It's a demanding area, and I hope we'll have more time in the future to do more work on this. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Janai, feel free to log off, by the way. My screen is frozen.
Sorry?
I was just saying, feel free to log off and get a rest. My screen is frozen. I'm just trying to make it work and stop the recording.